YWCA Hartford Region Community Matters Podcast. What's at stake and why should we care? With your host, Tiffany Young, special guest moderator, Yvonne Davis, and esteemed panelist, Melvette Hill, Executive Director, Connecticut General Assembly and Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity. Patricia Russo, Executive Director, the Campaign School at Yale. Coralys Santana, Policy and Advocacy Strategist, the Connecticut Project Action Fund. Community Matters.
I'm your moderator for today, Yvonne Renee Davis, and we are having a special election edition of Community Matters podcast. What's at stake and why should we care? And with me are three amazing women who will contribute to a dynamic discussion about issues that are most pertinent to women and families as we draw 7 days out for the 2024 presidential election. So, to my left, I'm going to ask each of you to say a little bit about yourself. I will start with Melvette Hill.
Hi, so good to be here. My name is Melvette Hill, and I am the Executive Director for the Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity. The main goal of our work is really to ensure that the voice of the people is heard in government. So we ensure that they have access and opportunity to engage with our legislators and to inform policy that matters most to them.
Coralys.
My name is Coralys Santana. I am a policy and advocacy strategist with the Connecticut Project Action Fund, which is a people-powered movement working for a more equitable and inclusive Connecticut. I lead our campaigns related to early childhood education and democracy, which we are in the middle of one right now, and I'm excited to be here this morning.
Patricia.
I'm Patty Russo. I'm the Executive Director of the Campaign School at Yale. The Campaign School at Yale is a nonpartisan, issue-neutral political campaign training program. We will be seating our 29th class at Yale Law School in June of next year, which is really, really exciting. Our mission is to increase the number of women in the political pipeline because we just don't have enough yet.
Yes. Well, this discussion is a free-flowing discussion. While I'll direct certain questions to you, you should not feel like you can't jump in. So the first question, I'm going to toss it over to Patty to give us, our audience, an overview and analysis of the political, economic, and social landscape as it relates to your areas of expertise and focusing on the community we serve at this moment.
Well, there's a lot going on. We're seeing a lot of energy, enthusiasm, not only at the top of the ticket, but down ballot as well. There's a lot of exciting activity going on in our little state right now. You could be out every night, Yvonne, working on something, postcard writing, phone calls, door to door. Right now, we tell our grads, this is the time for retail campaigning. This is it. 7 days out, this is it. So it's really the opportunity for everyone who's running for office to make the case, right? Make the case. Why you? A lot of times we say to our grads, you have to make the case. You have to instill in hopefully your constituents that you hope to serve. Why you? Why should you have the honor and the privilege to represent them in Hartford, in DC, locally, right? So it's really just a phenomenal time right now because the energy, the enthusiasm, the momentum on a variety of different issues is playing out literally on the streets right now, which is really, really exciting.
So, Coralys, give your analysis. from a political, economic, or social perspective?
Yeah, I think that we are in a historic time in Connecticut. For the first time in forever, we have early voting in Connecticut, and women are enthusiastically voting early because there are issues on the ballot that are really impact us, right? Even in voting in particular, we've gotten so far to get early voting done, and we're seeing it used. And I, I was sick this past weekend. I used it myself. I was like, you know what? I'm finally getting better. I'm going to take my daughter to a trunk or treat, and I'm going to go early vote at City Hall right next door. And it was amazing. And when we are in those moments of chaos and family life, it is so essential to have a system that really works for your life and meets your demands. And I can say, like, my kids are going to be off on election day because she's at school now. And what am I going to do with her? I don't know. But now I have options, and I feel at ease knowing that I've participated in democracy and also am able to spend time with my family.
That's a powerful point and excellent for families to hear that for a reason to go to the polls early. Melvette.
Yeah, I think right now, when I'm looking at the people that we're serving with our commission, women, children, we are serving seniors as well as a number of demographics, right? So we're looking at African Americans, Latinx, and Hispanic populations. We're looking at people who are citizens and not citizens, right? Who have citizenship status. We're looking at the intersectionality of all those groups. And when we're thinking about the economy, we are hoping, right, that the work that we're doing in the state to serve families is moving families from a position of having to access public benefits, but also moving them to a place where they're not just surviving, not just striving, but they're thriving, right? So I think that is the economic climate that we're hoping that will continue to be generated. Socially, I think that people are understanding that there is a lot of effort really trying to repair the fabric of our country. And, it's all frayed, right? And so over the course of many years, people are trying to come together and become advocates. They are shoring up their networks and their relationships and building their social capital. And so I think we're seeing this now in this election season where we see people out who are actually voting, where we see people who are traveling to other states, right, to kind of like stir things up, to encourage people to use their right to vote. That so many people died that we could have the right to do that. I would say politically, all bets are off and everything is on the line, right? And people have to vote like their life is dependent upon their vote.
No, this is powerful. And as I'm listening to each of you amazing ladies, I just feel the energy that's coming from you. And so that's what YWCA Hartford Region wanted to inspire women, that this is a moment, that this is the most critical moment of our lives. And so as we segue into the social political, let's move to the economics. So Coralys, when you look ahead at the election that's on its way here, what are some of the most pressing issues that you've observed that impact women and families? And if you could drill it down to the local communities, because as one great person said, is all politics are local.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. I think that we've been talking to voters as a Connecticut Project Action Fund, not just for the election and the referendum on the ballot this year, but also about the issues, about what they're facing and what they want to see in their communities. And what we overwhelmingly find is that families are living paycheck to paycheck, right? It takes over $126,000 a year for a family of four to be able to just survive. That's not even thriving, right? And eating into those budgets of families are childcare costs and housing. And those are costs that are high, like 9% higher in Connecticut than in the nation. And they are not really movable. And so we need to be able to stretch our state budget to address those issues of affordable childcare and housing costs and affordability and access, because there's just not enough. And when there is, it is not accessible by way of the high cost and the economic impact that bears. And overwhelmingly, what we see is that, it impacts women because we tend to be the ones to stay at home, or we tend to be the ones to not pursue a career. Um, an investment in childcare would lower um, our costs of our rates of poverty as seniors, because we would be investing in social security at a younger age, right? But we can't do those things if we don't have an infrastructure to serve us, and that's really what's top of mind, I think, for women when we're talking to them and interacting. That's what those are the issues that they're asking the candidates. That what are you supporting? What are you going to fight for? Because I need help now, and I really don't have time for theatrics.
That's right. So, Patty, in terms of the economy, we heard the famous statement in past elections: "The economy's stupid." So it's the economy again. So, from your perspective, where are we in this landscape dealing with the issues?
Really depends on who you ask, right?
Yes.
Because on the national level, there was just a big article in The Economist saying this is the strongest economy in the world, the United States of America right now. But again, if you're on the local level, you're not necessarily feeling that when you go to the gas station, right? Or when you go to buy groceries, right? So there's this cognitive dissonance right now, right? There's this, gosh, I'm not feeling it. It doesn't feel like it's the strongest economy for me. So oftentimes we say to our grads when they're running for office, why you? Why you? What are you going to do to solve problems? Your role as a public servant is to serve. Public service. That's why we call it public service. It's your job to serve. So it's also the responsibility for voters to educate themselves. Where do these candidates stand on issues that are important to me? How are you going to make my life better, my family's lives better? So, quick story, I'm doing more and more work, thankfully, with um, Reverend Bishop, Reverend Bishop Barber, William Barber, who's now at Yale Divinity School. Excellent. Such a gift. He's amazing. Gift. So back in March, he launched a nonpartisan 30 city-wide voter mobilization effort to focus on low income, middle class, who don't feel like anybody's talking to them. They only come around election time when they want my vote. Where are they in 2 years before that, right? And so I had the honor and pleasure and complete terror to get up on that stage in front of, 10,000 people in North Carolina. We're in Raleigh, so we were right in front of the state legislature in North Carolina. Everyone was talking about the importance of voting, getting out the vote, making sure you're registered, making sure your friends and family come out and vote, right? Vote in your own self-interest, right? And so mine was like, I was kind of racking my brain because no pressure. He made me the closer that day. And so I said, okay, everyone's talking about the importance of voting, which is critical. What can I do? Right. So I said, okay, you're all going to vote. I know you're all going to vote. You're going to get your friends and neighbors out to vote. I want you to think about leading, running for office someday, right? Being an effective leader on issues that you felt passionately about. Checking out the record, go on your laptop and figure out where your current state rep, state senator stands on issues that are important to you. And if they don't, or they are not aligned with you, vote them out and run to replace them. So we were, again, the backdrop couldn't have been perfect. I said, and I will come back to train you, right? So it's just, again, not enough to say, do it. You need to be trained to get ready to run, but we will come back and do it. So I'll be back in North Carolina in January. We've got a one-day training coming up in Detroit right after Election Day, hit the ground running on November 9th in person, and then we're back in Connecticut on November 16th.
Yeah, we can't stop the momentum.
We cannot, because no matter who wins at the top of the ticket, we need more women. That's the bottom line.
Melvette, I'd like you to address the economy, the economic issues from dealing from a marginalized communities perspective, drilling it down more to women and people of color in the communities.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in addition to what they've shared, because that affects those folks, right? Marginalized communities and women in particular, the issues that are really important as we look at the economy are kind of adjacent issues. When we think about healthcare, right? Like, so we're thinking about mental health, and you're kind of wondering, like, what do these things have to do with the economy? So mental health, maternal health, right? Especially we look at Black women and Latinas. Also, we think about reproductive health and reproductive rights and pay equity. All those things feed into the economy, right? It's this concept. If I had a T-shirt that said this, I actually have to get the T-shirt. But thriving families drive economies. So if people aren't well, they're not working. They can't take care of their families. So what happens to our economy? Right? There are definitely holes in our economic system right now when we look at the workforce and labor. They're trying, even in Connecticut, we're trying to fill so many jobs. And it's not just manufacturing jobs, right? There is definitely a deficit where people are moving toward entrepreneurship, where people are deciding, like, I'm not going to work 12 jobs in order to make a livable wage. So these are the things that are really affecting marginalized communities. They want to have agency. They want to be able to decide what type of work they do. They want to be able to decide on their own dreams. So when we look at public benefits, and we see that people are being told, well, we have jobs here, so we want you to go to the training program so we can fill the jobs that we have, right? But we're not listening to the dreams of people. Why can't people be self-directed and self-directing their lives and what their hopes and dreams are? And so I think this really builds, has this conversation around the economy, around dreams, around jobs. If we look at things like AI, generative AI, all types of AI.
Powerful.
Right. AI is going to be taking jobs. I don't care what they say, right? Also, AI will create jobs. Are those jobs going to be available and accessible to people of color? That's what we have to start thinking about. Also, when we look at things like quantum computing, do people of color have access to pathways, right, in these very high-level STEM occupations, right? Those are the things that are going to be driving the economy, technology, right? And so we have to be more globally competitive in Connecticut, in the state of Connecticut, and these United States. And many times people of color are left out of those conversations, are left out of those educational conversations, are left out of those conversations in community and with, amongst others, right? So I think those are the things that we have to start looking at, like, that's feeding this. We have to think upstream as to how can we get more people of color, more women as well, into these types of jobs that are going to be fueling our economy in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and we have to look at how we get women not to feel intimidated, because if you're talking about AI or technology as it relates to the economy, a lot of these service sector jobs will disappear.
Yeah.
And so the question becomes, how do women get prepared for the transition or the movement towards opportunity where they could actually fill in? Would you want to add to that?
Yeah,
I
would
welcome that for everyone else.
I would say we start with little girls, right? Because I mean, that's where our hope is in the future of investing in children. So even in preschool and early childhood, even in those preschool settings, like, what are the toys that children are playing with? Are those toys helping to build executive function that will help them later as they grow and advance and learn different things? Are we offering them things in mathematics in those early years? Yes, we're doing blocks and things like that. But what are the things that we are serving to our children to feed their minds while they're in these early childhood spaces? I say we start with little girls in particular, as we think about opportunities for women.
Yeah, I would second that. And I'm a plug here for that 2-gen approach,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Investing in the families and the parents and investing in the children. I think it's going to take a lot of resources, but we have to understand that when we make those investments as a state, we're getting a return. For every dollar that we invest in childcare, we get a 7 to 13% return. It's going to fuel that economy, and I'm going to have to mass produce that T-shirt you were talking about, because we're tired of just as a Latina woman, and I'll say this, we are tired of just working to survive. Like, we want to have, as first generation, first in my family to own a home and do all the things. Like, it is crushing to hold the weight of your entire family, extended, and the family that you're creating, when those opportunities feel so few and far between. And so I really would like to see more women come into, running for office. Like every time I get to vote for a woman on the ballot, I took my daughter to go early vote with me, and I talked to her about all the women that I know that are on that ballot. And it's fueling for me because she's learned a little bit. She said, "Mommy, when are you going to stop talking about absentee voting?" And I was like, "When we win the referendum, I will stop talking about absentee voting." But she's understanding these things and these opportunities that are going to be created for her to choose whether or not she wants them. Like, I'm not going to push the political activism on my child, but I am going to teach her that she has more options and whatever, is just pushed onto her.
No, it's powerful. Patty, in terms of when you're working with candidates, in terms of technology, I mean, the smartphone is, I mean, in all communities, most people, the statistics show that over 70% of people or more have smartphones. How is that? How do you think that's being utilized in terms of getting the message out, in terms of the issues that are there?
In COVID, it was a lifesaver, okay? Because, the first year when everything was shut down, the Yale campus was shut down. So we had to zoom into Plan B and figure out what that was going to look like. And so that year, that March, that June, we decided to offer the training free online because there were so many of our grads who were running who needed, additional help with social media and other ways. I'm having a fundraiser, Patty, but nobody can come to my party because we can't be in the same room together. We had to think creatively and differently. And so it was our way of paying it forward. We had literally hundreds of women who were running that year, many of whom were our grads, but many were not, right? Who were so grateful for that. Every year we tweak our curriculum, Yvonne, at our 5-day to make sure that we're current. I mean, all the AI stuff that's going on right now, there was a big push yesterday. There's all this fake stuff coming out of Russia and other places, but it looks real, right? It looks, and so how do you educate yourself? How do you get the word out so that people can make informed decisions based on reality and not fake news?
Yeah, no,
it's overwhelming, quite frankly. Yeah. And just with my PCSW hat on, I was thinking about so many fond years, 25 years up here as a member of the PCSW board. The year we were pushing for pay equity, and the year that we were pushing for family medical leave. And oh gosh, many of those legislators, their hair was on fire. What we tried to explain is it elevates everyone in our society. A vibrant and equitable community is a good thing for everybody. So just, 6 months ago, I'm in New Jersey and my nephew is just had a baby and he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm on family leave." You're welcome. You're welcome, right?
That's right.
Just so it elevates everybody. Last week, I was at a wonderful community forum hosted by the Links. And one of my rockstar grads, CC Morris, state senator, was talking about how that she was able to promote lunch for everybody. Lunch for everybody. It elevates everybody. Exactly. Okay. Now, kids want to go to school early so they can have or breakfast so they can see their friends, right? Everybody is, well fed so you can think and you can. So this is the whole thing about the work. It lifts up and elevates everybody.
It elevates everyone.
It's not just about one segment of our population. Exactly. It lifts us all up.
So let's turn to healthcare because I know that Coralys touched on it. Let's talk about access to healthcare and where we are at when it comes to women and in marginalized communities. What's at stake here?
Everything is at stake, right? Because all of the folks that get voted into office, whether you cast your ballot for them or not, will have decision-making power over what the state spends their money on, what programs exist, what programs cease to exist. And it matters when we have high mortality rates among Black women, and, in our maternity wards in Connecticut. Like, it is hard enough to navigate the world as a woman of color, and we need to consistently break down those barriers, and that happens when you cast your ballot. Like, whether you feel like it's impacting it that day or not, it will. It comes, like, what goes around comes around. And there are a lot of women who have been fighting for years, right? Pat is talking about her tenure, and it the more I hear those stories, the more inspired I am to continue my work in advocacy, because it just can't stop. The momentum can't stop, because the world will not stop turning because, somebody got voted in for president or not.
Melvette, what does it look like for you?
You know, healthcare is important for women, for marginalized communities, for children. And I was listening earlier today to someone speak, and they brought up this quote, right? Like, what kind of world are we leaving for our children? And then the response, the second sentence was something that we normally don't imagine is, what kind of children are we leaving for our world? And so it makes me think about going back to that investment in children in early care, but also in their health. So when we think about social justice, and I always like to say I'm a social justice warrior. I would also say that I work for a nonpartisan commission of our state legislature. I think about, climate change. I think about the environment, right? So when we think about environmental justice, what kind of healthy communities are we building for our children? What policies are in place to ensure that they have clean air and that they're not victims of asthma that's caused by mold, that's caused by all the fumes of the highway, and, dumps. So I think about that. I also think about maternal health, right? And access to good healthcare for moms, for women. And also, if we have healthy moms and we have healthy babies, but we have moms who are struggling with their health, with lots of premorbidities, then guess what? We're not going to have healthy infants, right? And so our infant mortality rate is up.
It's alarming.
It is, right? And so these are things I'm thinking about. I also want to say that these issues are not just women's issues.
Talk about
That
it.
these are also, issues for men, that men should be paying attention, because it's not just your wife or your girlfriend, it's your sister, it's your mother, it's your niece, it's your potential granddaughter at some point. And it's your coworker, it's your colleague. And so if men aren't paying attention to these issues, and accepting them as issues for themselves as well, as partners, as colleagues, as helpmates in this work and in this world, as human beings, then we're really missing something. They're missing out on an opportunity to vote for things that would be more beneficial to women and children. Yeah.
And oftentimes in communities of color, men of color don't take care of their health like they should. And it's usually the woman or the mother or the grandmother or the sister that's encouraging to go get your prostate checked or doing things. At the same time, they have to care for their own health.
Yes.
So it becomes like a double duty situation. Yes. And a lot of times women, you could all chime in, become neglectful in that space of their own health and wellness. And so having access to healthcare is important, but also too looking at what are the messages that need to be said, do you think would be said to actually make sure that women are looking out for themselves? A big issue now that we have is a whole issue about self-care, that we don't do it enough. So we forget to get our mammogram or our annual or things of this nature. And the cancer rates are climbing among women of color. Any comments to that?
No, again, with the strongest economy in the nation, I mean, in the world,
yes,
it's outrageous.
It's outrageous.
It's outrageous. And it's outrageous that it's happening in our own state. Okay. Not necessarily with my campaign school at Yale hat on, but as a warrior goddess with these two. It's just that we have the wealthiest communities in our little state and some of the poorest cities. How can that be? Why? How do we allow that? Right? That's why it's so important. Elected officials aren't perfect. They're fabulously flawed, like the rest of us. They need education. They need to hear from us, right? Um, but they do have responsibility to be compassionate leaders. That's what I hope that we do at our school. That's what we create at our school. Oftentimes people say, wow, a nonpartisan school, how does that happen? We find commonality. A lot of times we just give our students the opportunity to get to know each other as people. I know, what a concept. Just why do you believe what you do? How did you get there? Tell me about what's your story, which, everyone has a story. So just giving people the opportunity to understand, more listening than talking. Why do you believe what you do? How did you get there? But also the electorate, making sure that the issues that are critical to you and to your families are represented in Hartford and in DC. And if they're not, you find somebody else to support.
And I like the way you did the local to the national, because
Mhm.
again, all politics is local.
Mhm.
You have the national, but
Mhm.
when you go out the door, somebody's calling you up, Melvette, and you probably get these calls, or you get these calls.
Mhm.
My heat's about to be turned off.
Mhm.
Do you have any programs that have to be paid?
Mhm.
That can help with the
Mhm.
pay. We know that we have an astronomical utility situation. I think UI just recently asked for permission to increase rates, and so this affects families.
Right.
And so we're going into winter right now. If you forget to pay your bill, they will send you a shutoff notice. And so these are some of the things that we have to address. And I know at YWCA Hartford Region, we do address these issues in terms of, the career, YW career, to help women prepare. We just did the annual Denise L. Napier Money Conference, preparing women to be able to be financial independent and sufficient to take care of themselves and their families. So I'm sure you've gotten those calls.
Yes, we have. But I want to go back to that self-care thing,
Yes,
because
please.
those calls that we get are people who are in distress, right? And we're talking about women. Women suppress stress, right? And it becomes a part of their body, and it causes illness. But this whole idea around self-care, there are policies that can be put in place to ensure that people, especially women, get the self-care that they need. So people would say, oh, you might have PTO, or you have sick days, or you have all these other kinds of things. And that's great. Not everyone gets those, right? Those are a privilege. So let's just understand that not everyone has the privilege of having that type of paid time off and vacation days and things like that. I feel that I have to say that there are some people who work 2 or 3 jobs, and self-care is just not something that they can even think about, right? Like that's the reality of some families. But there are some nonprofits who are kind of like dabbling in this space of how can we offer more self-care opportunities for the people who work for us, right? So, I know one nonprofit, the third Monday of every month, the whole team has the day off just for self-care, and they call it Self-Care Monday. And it's a paid day off, right? That's saying something. It's not just saying, oh, you have a paid day off. It's saying that paid day off is for self-care. So I think that we can learn a lot from our nonprofit organizations and philanthropy, and how they're bringing these things to light and really labeling them what they should be, right? Like instead, having a staff retreat. So we had a staff retreat, and usually our staff retreats are like work, right? Like we're working, right? It's more like a strategy session. That's what I've come to know some staff retreats to be. But when I had a staff retreat with my staff, I was like, no, we're going to have like get to know you time. We're going to have time to play. We're going to have time to have conversation and to de-stress, so that we can have a moment to acknowledge like what we've done, also where we are, and then we can get ready for the future. There was no strategy at all in that conversation. I had manipulatives, things to play with, things for them to explore and kind of like their senses. And we were by the water. It was great. And what they said was, this was great because we've never slowed down long enough to have this kind of moment. And so I think we can learn from that. And I think if we start pushing for policies that say, okay, each organization has to have a self-care day for their staff, right? Even if you take the current PTO and call one of those days self-care day, it says something. It starts saying, we care enough about you to give you time to take care of yourself. So sometimes we have to have people do that for us because as
Yeah.
women, we're not most of the time we're not going to do it.
Correct.
Yeah.
They don't. So I just got I post a lot, as
Mhm.
you know, Yvonne, and I had written something about we're a month out. Everybody's crazed, and this is when things start falling off the rails. Everyone's so tired. They're not, they're not getting their rest. They're not hydrated. All of it, right? And oh, I'll sleep in December. No, you won't, because you'll be dead by then.
Right.
No.
Right.
So this whole thing of allowing of giving yourself the gift of rest, of being
Sleep.
hydrated.
Yeah.
I'll say to them oftentimes, the mentoring coaching component is full stop right now for me with our grads. They know that they can call me. I'm a night owl. They know they can call me when they're kind of, at the end of the day, 10 o'clock, 10:30. And I'll say to them, go to bed, take a nice warm bath or shower, get into bed, turn off your phone. The scrolling, TikTok can wait. It can wait.
Yes.
Because you have to be, and you want to be
Exactly.
rock star fabulous tomorrow. You want to end strong and well, right? So what happens when we're tired? We're cranky. God help me if I'm hungry. All bets are off. Italian
Yeah.
food's important,
Yeah.
right? So get your rest. Stay hydrated. A lot of times women are like, I'm so foggy. What's wrong with me? I can't
not
think.
drinking enough
I'm so
water.
stressed out.
Not resting.
How much water are you drinking? I don't have time to drink water, Patty.
Yeah.
I'm on the
Yeah,
road,
they don't get
right?
it.
It's all of that. Just take a beat. I also meditate. I meditate in the morning and I meditate at night. So that's the beauty of meditation. Revs you up in the morning, calms you down so you can get the 7-8 hours that you need.
So we're here at Studio 135 having a dynamic discussion about the election and issues that matter most to women, children, and families. And I'm here with three dynamic women, Melvette Hill, Patricia Russo, and Coralys Santana. So we're going to turn right now over to reproductive health. And I'll start with you, Patty, and then I will ask Coralys and Melvette to chime in. Talk to us, just give because you work with candidates on both sides of the aisle and you're a nonpartisan organization. If you could just present how the reproductive health policies proposed by the presidential candidates actually differ, and just putting it out there, and just for our audience sake, we are presenting the information for you to make informed decisions. We are not taking a position, and the YWCA Hartford region is a partisan nonprofit organization that does not take a position on party.
With that, without my campaign school tiara on, I feel that my body has been a battleground all my life. All my life. I started my career, you may recall, with the late, great Bella Abzug.
Yes.
Google her. A lot of times I'll say to young women who've never heard of her, how many of you have a credit card in your wallet? Every hand goes up, right? Well, you can thank Bella for that and her Fair Credit Act not that long ago. So I feel that this has been reproductive health for women has been a battleground forever, right? Forever. You never hear, I mean, again, back to Bella, there was a piece of legislation that was introduced by her and her colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans, and there were even fewer women back then in Congress than there are now, who were supporting funding, right? Government funding for mammograms. They didn't have it back then, but they had government funding for testicular cancer screenings. Okay, so really, who's in charge, right? And so that's what she was just saying, that this is just outrageous. The rates of breast cancer even back then were off the charts. So why are we even having this conversation? We say to our grads that they do have a responsibility to educate themselves. What if you are going to represent your community? Where do they stand on these issues, right? What's important to them? And make sure that you represent them well. Or if there's something that you don't agree with them on, explain why, where you come from. And so again, that's we don't take a stand on issues, but we do help our students create informed, thoughtful stands on issues that are important in their communities. And then again, it's up to the voters to ask those questions. Now, sometimes, and this has been a major frustration this year with many of our grads, their opponents are not showing up for debates. Gosh, I want to ask my, the people who were, but one of them's just not showing up. And how do we creatively deal with that, right? So you'd have to do your homework, right? You have to make sure that the people that are, or the candidates who are representing you are truly representing you, and you're not. Why would you vote against yourself?
Exactly.
Right? That's just, again, trying to find correct information, accurate information. And there's loads out there. I mean, go to the official presidential websites and take a look at what they say on this issue.
I mean, without my, Connecticut Project hat on, I would say that it should be up to me, right? Like, I am of childbearing age. I have 2 kids. I don't want any more. I can't handle anymore. How about that? I just think that it goes beyond the election season. Right? There are promises that get made during campaigns, and folks win on those promises. And when it's time to fulfill those promises, it doesn't happen, or maybe the opposite happens. And so, it is also important to stay engaged throughout the process. I'm big on the legislative process, but it happens at the local level in our, when was the last time we attended a city meeting, at the Board of Alders in Waterbury or wherever else that you live? Like, when was the last time that you've engaged your officials to hold them accountable to the things that you as a community need? And right, that applies to reproductive health and every other issue that exists.
Well, Melvette, body autonomy.
Yeah, I think it's important that people have a right to choose what to do with their bodies, not just men, but also women. No one's telling men. There are no laws being passed to tell men what to do with their reproductive organs. And with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, now that states have power to make, to enact legislation for each individual state, there is the idea that one of the candidates might enforce a national abortion ban, right? If that person wins, the other candidates, like, everyone's going to have freedom to do what they want with their bodies, right? So I think these are the conversations that people need to be thinking about. I always tell people, like, vote your values. And I also encourage people to be a little indifferent to single issue voting, because you have to look at your whole self, right, and your whole family. And so, again, it goes back to, for those of us who have children and grandchildren, right? What kind of world am I leaving for my grandchildren? How am I preparing them for the world to come? And I think that standing up for things that are important to you is important. Not just the whim of the day, not just the issue of the day, but what are the things that are going to get me to longevity in life and to thriving, and what's the future I'm leaving for the next 7 generations? Because guess what? The generations before us left this world to us that we have now. So I think people should have autonomy and be able to decide what to do with their bodies.
So before we turn to childcare to talk about childcare, I'd like to tell the audience that if you have any questions, you can please submit them, and I will read them on the air to our amazing panelists. So you could do that at this time. So we're going to talk about childcare policies. We know the state of Connecticut has done quite a bit to try to alleviate the economic challenges related to childcare. You have situations where women are forced to stay home because they can't go to work to take care of their children. So there's a dilemma. Recently, Governor Lamont had worked to be able to alleviate some of the economic stresses. However, Connecticut is the 4th highest in the nation when it comes to child care. So when we relate it to policies or economics, what can can we start to do to really address this issue holistically? And I'll just toss that to anyone who would like to talk about it. I know you mentioned childcare. Somebody mentioned
I did.
childcare.
I'll start because I know
Yes.
Coralys has a lot to say.
Yeah.
It's gonna take.
We're gonna
it's
have
take-
you're gonna tear up.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Tee
tee
me
it
up,
up.
tee
We're
me
gonna
up.
tee you up.
Right.
Go ahead.
I think what's important for people to think about is on both sides of it. So if we're talking about women, let's talk about women in this conversation. And women are on this side, on both sides. Women are mothers and grandmothers also who are seeking childcare and who have enormous amounts to pay for childcare. In some cases, people's childcare expense exceeds the amount of their rent or mortgage.
Yes, that's true.
Right? We're just going to say that out loud. Let's just make it plain. But on the other side of that are women who are running childcare businesses, right? And this affects them too. So they are in a position where they're losing staff because they can't pay them a livable wage. We have people with bachelor's degrees who are working in early childcare facilities and are being paid pennies where they can go and use that degree on something else. And there's not enough subsidies to balance it out for either, for both the mother as well as the entrepreneur who's running a childcare business or a family childcare business. So I think like we have to see this holistically from both sides. And I think what will work are policies that are going to help both sides, right? And I really believe what people who are really struggling are family child care providers. I know the Office of Early Childhood has a program that they're doing to encourage and elevate and support family child care providers. I also want people to see this as entrepreneurship. Again, that gives people back power, right? I'm running my own business. So how can we better support those people who are running their businesses? And what other funding can they get outside of like state government to support them, right? What information do I need? So I'll give you an example. One of the things that we do at the commission, we lead our Parent Leadership Training Institute, which is a family civics initiative that we've been doing for like over 32 years in Connecticut. It's a two-generational approach where parents and children are learning together how state and local government work. So we did a pilot with the National Association for Family Child Care, where we did this little hybrid approach where we were like, let's focus on family child care providers and let's give them leadership skills so they can understand advocacy, understand how local and state government works, and also let's also give them this business building skill. So help them do a budget, help them come up with strategic plans, and also like let's really like go deep into advocacy. How can they then advocate for themselves in policy, but also for the families they serve? And so we've been doing that with the National Association for Family Child Care. Hi, Erica Phillips. For about 3 years now with our partner, the National Parent Leadership Institute. So that's kind of like what I'm saying. It's like, how are we really deeply helping to solve these problems? We just can't say, all right, well, here's some money, go figure it out. But we really have to invest in a pathway, right, to better.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, child care is the issue that I have most recently worked on at the legislative level, lobbying. There's programs that exist, and yet we are here because we're in a child care crisis in Connecticut. There was a lot of money invested in early childhood education and care, and it has still proven to not be enough to serve the number of families that qualify for subsidies. And then there's the deal with the ARPA money expiring,
Yes,
and what the state legislature will do next year. We will probably all be working on that. But the truth is that families need access to subsidies, and the women need to get paid more. This impacts the women on every level, from the women who need the child care and the women operating the businesses, right? Those returns on those investments are not high enough. The wages are not high enough. And we need to do more to make sure that gets to a level that we are truly meeting the needs of families. And that really will create a financial stability and an economy that actually works for everyone, because it impacts everybody across the board. But we know that the disproportionately impacts women just a little bit more. And that is to say that we should really truly be looking at what truly matters, where our values are as, entities, nonprofits, nonpartisan engaging, and also as where the state government lies. Because if they are the ones with the authority to do something and they do nothing, then we're going to have a bigger crisis on our hands. And then what? And so, like, with the child care, right, like, I'm also directly impacted by this. I have a 5-year-old who just went to kindergarten, but I also have a 2-year-old who's at a family child care provider in Waterbury who I love dearly. And I don't have a village, right? Like, that child care providers are my village. And they are truly doing God's work with nurture and love and caring and compassion. And they are also struggling. And so we need to do more.
Patty, I have a specific question for you about the importance of teaching young people about the power of their vote and how we can empower them as future leaders, because a lot of young people are getting their information, like you said, off of TikTok, off of Instagram, and it's you can have up to 3 minutes to talk, and they're taking and they're tweeting about it. Well, they don't tweet. I think it's something else now, whatever they do now. But it's mostly the Instagram and the TikTok. And so, what is it that we can do, especially for a first time voter? You just turned 18. My first time voting was Reagan when he was running for president. That was the first time I voted. And so, what could we tell young people? And and you're a young person, I feel still. You could comment, and Melvette comment. What do you think you could tell them?
Well, first, before I answer that, I want to just shout out to Vote Mama, the Vote Mama Foundation. That group, they do amazing work. One of the biggest obstacles to getting young women to run for office, especially young single moms, they're taking their kids on the road, right? They're taking them to campaign headquarters and they're taking them door to door. And, a toddler for 5 minutes is a lot of fun and they think it's cool. And then they have a meltdown at the door. You're trying to, you're doing double duty, right? You're multitasking, which is what we do, right? As a gender. And so they're having a fit, right? And so it was really thanks to their transformative, groundbreaking work that many states now will allow candidates to use their campaign funds for childcare. Again, this not only benefits women running, it benefits men running, all genders running. It's a win-win, right? And so that's really exciting. I believe it started right here in Connecticut, and that there was a young mom who was in Fairfield, I think, Connecticut, who was just like, I want to be able to use some of my campaign money that I've raised in order to offset childcare. I can't afford to run for office. So to your point about getting more young women engaged, as you know, I speak 24/7. I will speak to anybody who will listen to us about civic engagement and the importance of being a leader in your life, whatever that looks like for you. Now, again, on the college campuses, we're seeing, again, energy, excitement, enthusiasm around issues that they feel passionately about. So making sure that whoever you support for Congress and up, or down ballot, it again reflects what you believe in. And they're all over in these races right now. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of young people coming. So back in 2007, 2008, I call it the Obama phenomenon. We started seeing more and more young women of color applying to our school. And it was like they had taken time off from work or school to work for Barack Obama. They caught the bug. They had never been politically engaged before. Hey, why not me? I want to run for office. State Senate, state rep, local. I want to give back in this way. I love it. And that's when you're political, you either love it or what was I thinking? No. And so we saw an influx of young women of color coming to the training. Also, as you know, what you get with us when you come to our school is a lifelong commitment to us being there for you, right? You're going to have tough times on the campaign trail. I don't care how young or old you are. You're just going to have a minute, right? Where you're going to want to be able to call somebody, text somebody. We are that resource for our grads, right? And grads will tell you that. So that's how I think we do it. We just planting the seed. Why not you? Right? We saw it again in 2016. after the presidential. We're going to see it again. There's going to be an uptick
Mm-hmm.
of younger women after this race, right? So on November 7th, November 8th, whenever, maybe in February when this is finally, announced who won the presidency, we're going to start seeing an increase in the number of women who will decide they want to run for office or run a campaign, which is the other component of the work.
Yeah.
I think so. My first election was in 2014, and it was a governor's race. And I was at UConn Waterbury, and I remember so clearly. And I think that there is this misconception that millennials and Gen Z don't care about what is happening. On the contrary, I think this generation is powerful and politically active and make their voices heard, and in ways that are different, right, than the traditional way. But I think candidates and campaigns of any measure need to do a due diligence to reach voters where they are, and where they hang out. Like if we're hanging out on TikTok, you should probably be there, or you should be on, Instagram or wherever, the new app that folks are hanging out on, because
Snapchat.
I've learned so much. I've learned truly so much about different topics on that app, and also it is a big distraction. So you need to be able to walk away from it sometimes. But truly, engaging people where they are and this generation about the issues that matter to them is so important. And when I see, campaigns that are not doing that due diligence, it makes me really sad, because at the end of the day, that is who you're leaving. That's the bench, and we should be cultivating that bench. I know that I am here because woman in a position of power was like, I need an employee that is from my district. I started as legislative aide in the General Assembly, and she took me very far. And I will always be grateful for that, because these opportunities, they don't exist unless you take them, essentially. They're not, with the exception, of course, of the campaign school, there are few and far between. And so we need to be more conscious and proactive about engaging younger people and teaching them the things that we're learning along the way.
Melvette.
So since we're talking about first elections, that's where we seem to start. My first election that I remember was when I was 7 years old. Yes, indeed. It was 1977. I believe that was, or 76. I can't quite remember, but I was about 7. And it was Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter.
That's right.
And I was in second grade. And my teacher said, we're going to vote for president. And she gave us little ballots with their names on it. And I remember checking the one that sounded like a car, because I like cars. And that person didn't win. That was my first experience voting. I think that's where we start. We start with our younger kids,
Absolutely.
helping them understand very simplistic terms. I think sometimes we forget that we have to tell children, you are great. You can be great. You can engage. You know things. And so when we give them an opportunity to vote, to pretend to vote, that tells them oh, this is something we do, right? That's what I learned. I always wanted to vote after that. I would say also engaging young people, those access and opportunity points, opening a door. When we can, we should open our door for opportunity for young people to be on boards and commissions. It's a lot of nonprofits and a lot of cultural alliances. I can tell you, because my daughter, as a teenager, was invited to be on a board, which was so interesting, right? But she learned a lot. She probably won't run for office, but now she's on another board. She made a decision. I don't want to be on that board. I want to be on this board. But she has an opportunity to learn how to govern. And so I think when we start, expanded our thinking and being innovative about how can we bring young people into spaces where they can kind of learn how to govern and learn what happens in the process and how to vote on things. Maybe you're not voting on an election, but you're voting on something. I think that opens the door to wanting to do more and to be more.
Yeah, I love the way you taught. What you did, you talked about expanding democracy and equity and democracy with boards and commissions. Shout out to YWCA Hartford Region for its 50-50 campaign, which is increasing more women and people of color on boards and commissions. So as we start to wrap up, I want you to say in about 25 seconds, what would be the one message that you would say to a person that didn't want to vote or was sitting on the edge and wanted to stay home? What would you say to them to inspire them to vote? I'm going to start with you, Melvette.
This is easy. I tell everyone this: vote because your life depends on it. When you decide not to vote, you're giving someone else the opportunity to make decisions for you. So your vote really means that you're voting like your life depends on it.
Coralys?
I would say your voice matters, your vote matters. There are people who have died for your right to vote, and it is important that you cast your ballot. And I would also say vote yes on the referendum question to expand absentee voting.
Patty?
Oh, this is so big. It's so big, yet so simple. I mean, it's one of the things that I start off by asking everyone I'm talking to between now and next week. Hi, did you vote yet? Hi, when are you going to vote? Just kind of, try to put some humor in it. But again, to Melvette's point, why would you just give up your opportunity when you feel that, oh, it doesn't matter, or what difference does it make? Well, I'm about to show you what difference it makes. And I'm reminded of that wonderful Maya Angelou quote: when people show you who they are, believe them the first time.
Right. And I'm going to end right here. That's a powerful quote. We want to thank all of you for watching today on this wonderful and very critical Community Matters. What's at stake and why should we care? My name is Yvonne Renee Davis. Thank you and have a wonderful day. And don't forget to do what on next Tuesday?
Vote.
Vote.
Vote.